In our last episode, we went inside Castle Siege. We heard, in the words of real witnesses, what Elizabeth Báthory did to the young women who came into her service. We heard about the needles, the irons, the knives, the cold. We heard a man weep as he watched his niece being led away to her death. And we ended with a question: was all of this real? Or was Elizabeth Báthory the victim of a political conspiracy so powerful, it destroyed her completely? Today, we follow both threads. We look at what happened when Elizabeth grew bolder, when she stopped preying only on peasants, and when her crimes became impossible for even a king to ignore. For years, possibly decades, Elizabeth Báthory's victims were almost exclusively peasant girls. This was not an accident. It was strategy. In 16th and 17th century Hungary, a peasant girl who disappeared from a noble service was not necessarily cause for alarm. Peasants moved, they died of illness, they ran away, their families had little power to demand answers, and even less ability to force a great countess to provide them. The girls were lured with promises. Fico, the charming, well-spoken servant of Elizabeth, traveled to surrounding villages, offering young women the dream of employment, good wages, safe lodgings, the opportunity to serve one of the most powerful women in Hungary. Many families were desperate, many girls were willing, and many of them were never seen again. Lady Barbara Bixby, who traveled with Elizabeth and saw the cruelty firsthand, testified that she did not even know the names of most of the girls. Because, in general, the girls were grabbed from anywhere and brought there. Grabbed from anywhere. These were not women with powerful fathers or connected brothers. They were chosen precisely because their disappearance would raise no alarm, because no one would come looking. For years, this was enough to protect Elizabeth Báthory from consequences. But eventually, it stopped being enough. In the winter of 1609, Elizabeth Báthory did something remarkable, and something that would ultimately prove to be her undoing. She opened a Gynaeceum. A Gynaeceum, in this context, was similar to a finishing school. An institution where young noblewomen could go to learn courtly etiquette, refined manners, and the social graces required of women of high standing in Hungarian society. The timing was not coincidental. By 1609, Elizabeth's reputation among the peasant communities surrounding her castles had grown too dark. Too many families had lost daughters. Too many whispers had spread through the villages. Fewer and fewer peasant families were willing to let their daughters work at her estates. Elizabeth needed new victims. The Gynaeceum provided them, noble families, eager to improve their daughters' social standing, desperate for the connections that came with proximity to a powerful countess, lined up to send their girls to Elizabeth's finishing school. These were not peasants. These were daughters of Hungarian noblemen, girls with fathers who had voices, fathers who had access to the king's court, fathers who, when their daughters did not come home, would ask questions that could not be easily silenced. A noblewoman named Anna Zelesty, 54 years old when she testified, said that she had sent her own daughter Zsuzka to Lady Báthory's court. She testified with certainty that her daughter was beaten, tortured, and tormented until she was killed in the Gynaeceum. She had no doubt who was responsible. Another noblewoman, Dorothea Jezernicki, sent her daughter Erzsébet to the same Gynaeceum. Her daughter was also killed there. Anna Kashegi, 32 years old, made multiple trips to the Gynaeceum and saw the victims with her own eyes. Their fingers were broken, their hands were scorched. When she asked the girls what had happened, they told her. Báthory had burned them with red-hot irons. The Castellan of Castle Siege stated that he knew of at least 7 girls who had died at the Gynaeceum, buried in a small garden behind the castle courtyard, but they had not been buried deeply enough. Dogs had dug up the corpses. Dogs were carrying body parts through the castle grounds. It is said that in a matter of weeks, just weeks, all of the attendants of the Gynaeceum had been killed. When the noble families began to press Elizabeth, demanding to know what had happened to their daughters, she offered them an explanation. One of the girls, Elizabeth said, had gone mad, driven by greed for jewelry. This girl had murdered all the other attendants in the Gynaeceum, and then killed herself. One girl killed everyone, then killed herself. Because of jewelry, The explanation was so absurd, so transparently false, that it is almost difficult to believe Elizabeth thought it would be believed. But she said it with the full confidence of a woman who had never been questioned before, who had never faced consequences before, and who perhaps genuinely believed that her status would protect her from any scrutiny. She was wrong. Dozens of complaints from Hungarian nobles began flooding the courts of the king and the Palatine. Fathers demanded answers. Mothers wept in courtrooms. The silence that had protected Elizabeth for decades was cracking. And through those cracks, light was beginning to reach the horror she had hidden for so long. And then came the moment that shattered everything. One of Elizabeth's captives, a young woman held at Castle Seasage, managed to escape. She ran into the night, down the mountain, into the village below. She was found with a knife still lodged in her foot. She told the villagers what was happening inside the castle, what she had seen, what had been done to her, what she had watched being done to others. The village could no longer stay silent, the region could no longer look away, and the king could no longer pretend he had not heard. Before we move to the investigation, we must address the legend that has followed Elizabeth Báthory for over 400 years. The bloodbaths. The story most people know about the Blood Countess is this: that she believed bathing in the blood of virgin girls would preserve her youth and beauty. That she drained young women of their blood and immersed herself in it. It is a powerful story, a terrifying one, and it has been repeated in books, films, and folklore for centuries. But here is the truth about that story. The blood-bathing legend did not appear in any written record until 1729. Over 100 years after Elizabeth's death, not one witness, not one testimony, not one shred of contemporary evidence supports the blood-bathing story. Modern historians consider it unreliable, a legend built on rumor, expanded by imagination, and repeated by writers who found it more compelling than the documented truth. But here is the terrible irony: the documented truth, the needles, the irons, the starvation, the frozen girls, the hundreds upon hundreds of victims, is far more horrifying than any legend. Elizabeth Báthory did not need mythology to be monstrous. She was monstrous enough on her own. Some have claimed that Elizabeth Báthory's story inspired Bram Stoker when he wrote his famous novel, Dracula, in 1897. The castle in Transylvania, the hunger for blood, the female aristocrat with power over life and death. But when researchers examined Bram Stoker's own notes on the novel, they found no direct reference to Elizabeth Báthory. No evidence that he was aware of her story. The parallels may be coincidence, or they may reflect the same dark folklore that swirled through Central Europe for centuries. Whatever the connection, Elizabeth Báthory earned her nicknames without the help of fiction. The Blood Countess, Countess Dracula, she earned them in blood that was very, very real. By late 1610, the investigation into Elizabeth Báthory was no longer a matter of village gossip. It was a matter for the King of Hungary himself. King Matthias II had assigned Georg Thurzo, the powerful Palatine of Hungary, to investigate the accusations against the Countess. Thurzo's investigators had already collected 52 witness statements. By 1611, that number would rise to over 300. The trap was closing. In our next episode, Episode 4, we follow the investigation. We go inside the political machinery that surrounded it. We hear the testimonies that sealed Elizabeth's fate. And we witness the night that Georg Thurzo arrived at Castle Seasage unannounced, and found something that he would spend years trying to describe to a king who could barely believe what he was reading.